This is Prophet Talks. So, everybody in the black community, whether it be conscious, mostly conscious, but you see brothers from all walks of life talking about the subject of President Ibrahim Traorè being called out by General Langley. I'm gonna come from a different viewpoint, being in the military and having served, not like his service, not in his capacity. He is a 4-star general, so let me say with all due respect, thank him for his service. But, yeah, let's get into it. When you are in the military, you're insulated from a lot of the nonsense that the real world has to go to. That's why it's a culture shock when you get out, because and that's why you see a lot of veterans suicide, because they're not used to being on this side of society. A lot of things the military protects you from, they aren't the things in place that the military has to keep you from being, it keeps you from being aware of certain things. It inoculates you from a lot of things. And if you don't take steps in the military to try to keep your humanity, I'm not going to say humanity because they're not animals. This isn't the prison system, but in a lot of ways it does work like that. But you have to always take steps to keep. You need a sense of street smarts. That's what I said I had in the military. It was like I didn't buy fully into it. And I thank God every day I didn't, because who knows where I'll be right now. Now, I've been hospitalized and different things of that nature, full disclosure, with depression and anxiety issues. But those things can be fixed. Those things can be healed. I don't have the long-standing trauma of PTSD or something of that nature that's keeping me from living the most full life I can possibly live under God's green earth, under His sun. So, with that being said, I say that because this general was completely unawares of where black people are as a people. As a people, black people are far more conscious, far more militant, far more revolutionary. I'm not going to say minded, because we still allow a lot of things to go on in our community that we shouldn't, like with General. I'm gonna come from it from two different aspects. From the military side, where I have to give him all due respect being a general, because that is not easy. A 4-star general at that, that is not easy. That's the highest, that's the pinnacle you can get in the military. Then you have the brother side. And I gotta say, he's in the lower bracket on that. So he had to compromise himself in the black realm of society spectrum to accomplish on the personal on the personal to achieve being a general. And those are the type of decisions you got to make in the military. And I'm going to get into my thought process on that for why I got out. But, so, and it would have been my third contract. So I re-enlisted in the military for all intents and purposes. I was only a specialist. So let me say that again. That's why I say with all due respect. You know, I'm not some person who ascended to the highest reaches as a General Langley, Brother Langley. He's still a brother. You know, he just needs to come back to the tribe. And hopefully he can do it before he has one of those N-word wake-up moments. You know, we don't want an N-word wake-up from a general who, you know, gets thrown out when he's no longer politically good for the dominant society. So let me go back to the topic I was speaking on previous to that diatribe. There has never been a moment in which Black people have had halcyon upbringing or time in this country. There's no idyllic time in this country for Black people. You can't point to it and say, well, back in my day, we were, you know, there's no golden era. There's a golden era for movies, for football, for boxing, for most things in this country, but there is no golden era for Black people. How is that so? It's because the dominant society has constantly used threat violence or collusion, whatever it could, to stop Black people from ascending to the position that Blacks should inherently have in the world, being the original man, woman, the progenitors of all cultures, the people who should be gatekeeping most things in humanity, because most things come from the continent. So when you have a general who is Black but hasn't lived in Black society, and he was raised in the military. His father was a master sergeant. And so he was a military brat himself. And let me give you some context. My family, my grandfather was in the military. My uncle, my mom's brother was in the military. My great-grandfather was in the military. Cousins, numerous. They were in the military. And so I was in the military. So you have a lot of people live in that type of family where they have loved ones who serve in the military, but we weren't military brats. Nobody in my family was raised by their parent while being in the military. That wasn't our upbringing. So I could say a lot of people live in the type of family situation I have. And while, and so a lot of people in the military, they had a similar situation that I had. And then you have military brats, which is the other coin. And those dudes were built differently. They were, a lot of them are more military inclined, meaning that you could tell that they were going to stay in there for as long as they possibly could. And they lacked a sense of street smarts that most kids who grew up in black neighborhoods or things of that nature, which we were raised around and brought up in. So those dudes would have been sheltered from birth until 20 years or however long, in the general's case, however long. So they don't really have the same viewpoints that a person who wasn't raised on a military base has. They're not built the same. They're called military brats because their parents raised them on a military base or while they were in the military serving actively. So why this disconnect? Well, the military has its own built-in culture. It's just like rap or hip-hop for black kids, such as myself, who weren't raised on a military base or was raised in the hood. I was raised in projects. You know, we have our own culture that keeps us inoculated from the dominant society. It's a counterculture. We counter what the dominant society says is cool. We counter what they say is hip. We counter what they say is right and what they say is wrong. We counter. Active form of protest. Military brats can't and do not have that as a survival mechanism. And so they're more susceptible to, it's almost a form of Stockholm syndrome because they didn't volunteer to join the service as a baby when they were born. Their parents did, but they were brought underneath the military structure and they had to live according to that. And so, and that's why you gotta honor the people whose family go through stuff like that. Because the family makes a sacrifice. But back to the point. So they didn't volunteer, their parents did. And so they were brought under the system, military system. He's already in the system of white supremacy, being born a black man, but now he's under the military system too. Or others like him, because he's not the first and he won't be the last unless we put a stop to our black brothers and sisters in any, whether it be corporate, sports, media, militarily, or otherwise, until we stop letting our brothers and sisters be used like this by the powers that be, the white supremacist power structure, then we're still we're still going to get people like this who are culturally unawares of where we are as a people. You got your Wiz Khalifas who are outliers, street smart, savvy, awares, things of that nature, all good things. But he didn't succumb to that military brat identity. So I'm gonna tell you my own personal experience serving in the military during a tumultuous time in U.S. history. I already said before, I was already geared up to reenlist. I had all but signed the paperwork, and this is when Trayvon Martin happened, and my thought process changed. And it changed when I was watching CNN and seeing the protests for Black Lives Matter. And I seen police officers with uniforms, gun and badge, black police officers and stuff like that. Which at first I seen militarily minded. I seen men in uniform, and so me being in the military, I related to that. I was in uniform. I've been told to do things that I didn't agree with. I mean, it goes with the territory, but I had to ask myself at that moment, would I be able to draw down and possibly kill somebody in order to protect this system? And I didn't know it was a system at the time. It took me a long time and some education to know that I was part of a system that was made to denigrate and bring me down as a black man, but it also it also came to a head where when I'm seeing these police officers in riot gear and military, like these people had, like you watch any protests, these people have military equipment. They got military equipment. Almost look like they're invading. And I seen it then. I seen it before anybody else possibly probably. I seen it then when I was watching the Trayvon Martin protests and saying to myself that these people are going to have me attack people that look like me. Now it's okay. It's all okay when it's a Muslim or some far off land under the guise of terrorism, and I'm saying that in quotes. Some mysterious person from far away. You can bring yourself to a place mentally where you can say, well, I'm fighting for America. But when somebody look like you can't do that no more. And without equivocation, I could not see myself drawing down on another black person. I just I couldn't imagine me listening to somebody telling me to go out there and even do it. So I said, I'm going to get in trouble in the military if I keep this idea up. So I got out the military and educated myself on the things that is going on in this world. And so this is when I found out about white supremacy. And not only that, that I was a willing participant because of my neglectfulness and I wouldn't say willing, but I would say willing. Because the same way I found the information after Trayvon Martin, I could have found the information before. It is each and every person's responsibility to stay informed. So that was a neglect on my part. But I wasn't really too like the transition wasn't that hardcore. It was just knowing about white supremacy for me. I had been doing black activities my whole life. I love black culture. I love everything black. So that, I mean, it wasn't a huge wake up call, but it was a wake up call to know that there was forces, which you, most black people already know there's a problem. Most people already know that it's a white problem. What most people don't know is that it's a system. So with these black faces representing or being propped up for white supremacy to get its talking points off unabated, unanswered, because there's a black man to take all the pop shots. This is a dangerous game because Africa is rising, and if they ever got like an Arab Spring in Africa, to where they all just cleaned up in mass, that would probably be the greatest moment in human history outside Jesus Christ taking the cross. And his whole life, pretty much, Jesus Christ's whole life, pretty much, is the greatest moment of human history. But black people having a cleansing, spring cleaning type, get all the old baggage and clothes and junk out the house and bring in the new guard, you can't. It would be definitely one of the greatest moments in human history. So he was propped up, General Langley was propped up by these white supremacists. See, and this was something started by Barack Obama, the AFRICOM. I had a cousin that served in the AFRICOM. This is something that Joe Biden promoted him. And while I'm not saying the man don't deserve being a four-star general, why is it that his promotion to being a four-star general came with him leading a African or American forces in Africa? Why is it that they always send black police officers in black neighborhoods when they should be leading in every type of capacity in any type of country? It doesn't have to necessarily be, well, since you're black, we're giving you the black areas to police. Well, since you're a military general, we're going to give you the African continent to to pretty much police, because the U.S. military is world police. And they definitely needed a black face to cover up the fact that they're on that continent for no apparent reason. This shit, when they say they're on that continent to protect American interests, what American interest is in Africa? What possibly, what what is in Africa that's of American interest or should be? Because it's not democracy. It's not the betterment of the African people. What it is it's the resources. And the Russian powers ability to get to the resources. They pretty much have had no opposition to African resources since colonial time periods. And with the powers, the Ibrahim Traorè and the New Guard in Africa, the youth, people my age and younger, they're starting to see that it's almost as if, and when I say they, I mean of course, I mean the African continent, but I'm saying they as a youthful colloquy of people who have a Pan-African mindset. It's almost as if we don't have resources in Africa. We might as well not have resources. We might as well come from a barren landmass like Europe, where there is no abundance of resources. We might as well have just switched places with them and moved and swapped and gave up the land for land swap and just lived in utter in abject poverty on that continent, whereas when you live in Africa, it's got to hurt even more knowing that God has given you and provided you for you everything you needed to sustain oneself. And you just don't have access to your own continent, which resources, which Africa is just so blessed, like as a continent with resources. I mean, it almost proves that, and it does. But it proves that God does exist because he's blessed those people and us because we are Africans with just an abundance of mineral and oil and gold and uranium, like just whatever you need off the top of your head. That's like never having to go grocery shopping in Africa. And they're not being able to control that. So that's my perspective on the topic. These people who are propped up by white supremacy, black people especially, which you could be propped up from other races, but it's going to take a black person to really do the damage to black people. Because black people are wary people. You know, what we need as black people, we need to be listening to Drake, No New Friends. We don't need any new friends. We just need each other and the resources that God has provided us in Africa. The prophet speaks. The prophet spoke.